What's your practice schedule like as a Maryland baseball player?
Two questions. So in the fall, we have restrictions on how many hours we can be together as a team. Um, so in the fall, there's a good bit where it's just 8 hour weeks, which is
Yeah,
usually we'll lift Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We'll condition Tuesday, Thursday, um, and then we'll have like indie practices. So we'll do like infield, and then we'll hit. The position players will hit, and then the pitchers will do their own thing with the pitching coach. But then once we start team practice, that lasts for about like 3 or 4 weeks. The 8 hour weeks. Then we go to 20 hour weeks. We can be together 20 hours. That's a lot more of like team practice, the inner squads. But I would say like towards the end of the fall, most of the fall is just inner squatting. We play against each other a lot to get as many at bats, as many innings for the pitchers as possible.
yeah, for sure. How much of your fielding is how much of your practice is fielding practice as opposed to hitting?
That's a good question. I would say that definitely we hit more. Hitting is definitely a larger focus that we have here in Maryland. But I think um our infield coach Tommy, Coach Gardner, he he really likes when to practice infield. So we do take a lot of ground balls. We turn a lot of double plays. Work a lot on our cuts and our relays. I would say that the percentage is probably um 65-45 or 65-35. Sorry, 65-35. That's bad math. 65-35.
Yeah, that makes sense in my experience playing baseball just for high school. It's been pretty similar. I would say 65-35, maybe a little more fielding though. Sort of still on the topic of practice, how do you balance school and practice and how much free time does that leave you?
That's a good question. Not a lot of free time. I'll just start that out. And that's okay. Like I understand that. That's what I came here to do. I signed up for
Absolutely.
it. But we have our class block is from 9 to 1, so we can't have any classes before or after that block. Um, we our academic advisor does a pretty good job getting us into classes that stay within that time frame and then also aren't too difficult. But I'm a business analytics and operations management major, so my class schedule is a little tougher. It's just a little tougher of a major as compared to some of the other guys. Um, but it's like we have a ton of academic resources available to us. We can get tutors anytime we want. There's an academic building we can go and do our work. Um, I know my freshman year we're required to go to study hall at least a certain amount of time, a year or a week. I definitely use that. It's called Gossip.
Yeah, for
It's like it's where our weight room is too. It's where the football locker room used to be. It connects to the football stadium. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's just like you got to figure it out. You gotta get your work done before you go on the road. Because the last thing you want to be doing when you're sitting in a hotel after a Friday night game is trying to get your homework done before 11:59. And vice same thing on Saturday and Sunday. It's nice on Sunday when we travel back. I always like to get some homework done, especially if it's a bus trip, because there's just time to kill and stuff. So
Yeah, for sure. Sort of moving on from school, you bat left and throw with your right hand. Did that happen naturally, or how did you force that to happen? How did that?
it's a good question. I'm not really sure how I used to switch hit when I was little.
Oh,
Probably I started switch hitting probably when I was 4. Um, and then I got to an age. It's a funny story actually. I'm a Reds fan, so I went to this thing called Reds Fest, and Dusty Baker used to manage the Reds. And I asked him, I was like, "Hey, like, what do you think about switch hitting?" And he's like, "If you're good enough on one side, just stay on that side, especially if it's on the left side." So I was like, "All right, well, I'm a definitely better lefty hitter than I am righty, so I'm gonna stop switch hitting and just focus on switch hitting lefty, and that's just how it came to be."
and throwing right was always naturally you.
Yeah, yeah, throwing right was always natural. Um, yeah, I think, but all my parents are righty, and My brother's righty, so
When you do, I guess, normal like activities like eating or writing, do you use your right hand?
I do right-handed. I fish left-handed.
Okay.
I golf right-handed,
Right-handed.
and that's really about everything else. Yeah, everything I probably do right-handed except for fishing, hit.
Yeah, that makes sense for me. I mean, I'm left-handed, and I definitely do like a couple weird like things right-handed. It just happened. I'm not
Yep,
sure how, but
yep.
going into recruiting. So, how do schools recruit the players? Like, I've heard about how players have to like some players have to reach out to schools. How do schools convince players like you to go to their school instead of another one? What distinguishes some schools from another?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I just want to start off by saying like my recruiting process is going to be completely different than another person's, especially since when I went through it, there wasn't a rule. NCAA put a rule in about a year ago that you can't have contact with players until they start their junior year of high school.
Oh,
Uh,
really?
and that was completely different for me. I started my recruiting this summer going into my freshman year of high school.
Cool.
Um, Originally committed to Ohio State my sophomore year of high school, and then coach got fired, bounced out of there, and then found Maryland. But back to your question of how coaches and universities and programs get players to choose their program over another, it's all really relationship based. I think is a big thing. I mean, you're going to create different relationships with different coaches. I still have some relationships with coaches that recruited me. Um, if anything ever happened and I had to transfer, then those relationships are still good to have down the road. Or maybe that coach does really well at his program, and then he goes and gets a professional level job somewhere in an org doing as a hitting coach. And when it's time for the drafts, he sees your name in there. He's like, "Oh, I like this guy." It's just things like that. Those relationships go along like down the road. And then obviously, you got program history, facilities, school. So for me, like Maryland, like big Big Ten school. The facility is really nice. Coaching staff was awesome. It's a great school. It's almost a top 10 public school in the country. I think it's number 11. And it's everything you look for. So when it comes down to choosing schools, it's kind of, those things all stood out to me.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. Sort of just the overall like everything combined. You have to kind of, I guess, average out the pluses and minuses. And
Yep.
Maryland's a great school. I live very close to it.
Hmm.
Yeah, it looks like a great school. I have friends that go there, and like, it, is it more academically rigorous than Ohio State is? It is, right?
Yes, it is. Yeah. They both are great schools, but just from that rating standpoint, I think Maryland scores higher.
Yeah, for sure. Going to coaches, coaches sort of how do coaches coach the mental game of baseball, like getting in your own head? How do they sort of coach around that instead of, in addition to sort of the physical attributes like how to hit, how to throw?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think a lot of it is, um, a big thing that Swope teaches as a hitting coach and head coach is like there's a process. There's a process to things. There's a process to everything you do, right? Whether it's I don't know doing the dishes or I don't know getting your homework done or hitting in the cage. There's a process to everything. If you can nail the process, that's all that matters. So like there's always gonna be times where the result doesn't work out. If you can nail the process, if you can for hitting, for example, if you can get a good pitch and you can be on time, then you nailed the process, and then maybe you lined out to the center fielder, or maybe you hit a hard ground ball at second baseman, but you were on time and you smelled like a good pitch. And that's baseball, right? So I think that him just like emphasizing that baseball's a hard game, you're gonna fail. But the thing you can control is, the process was like, did I get a good pitch and was I on time? And if you weren't, then throw that thing out the window because you can't even assess that swing. You can't do anything about it. That at bat's gone, you just gotta go get the next one.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What's your mentality going into the first pitch? I know a lot of people don't like to swing at the first pitch. How do you sort of do you what's your mentality going into there?
That's good. Yeah, that's really good. I love swinging at the first pitch. I really do. Because as a freshman batting at the bottom of the order, in the spring, like guess what I'm getting? I'm getting a lot of fastballs probably.
Yeah, right.
Um, So if I get a first pitch fastball and it's open middle plate, like I'm gonna swing. I love it. If I miss it, and so what? 0-1, you know?
Yeah. How do you hit differently when you're down in the count rather than when you're up? Like two strikes, you obviously have to do some things differently, but if it's, how do you act differently, hit differently if it's a 3-1 count versus a 0-1 count?
Yeah, it's a good question. 3-1 accounts, like you're in an advantage. So my mentality is I can't get beat here. Like if 3-1, like chances are his pitch is coming, it's gonna be a fastball, maybe, hopefully, probably most of the time, because you don't want to walk me.
Ball, yeah.
So you can't get beat in a 3-1 count. If a fastball's there, you got to be able to hammer it. Now, as opposed to 0-1, 0-1's a little different. I mean, I don't want to say like I get really defensive when I'm in not in plus counts, just because my approach really doesn't change much. Even with two strikes, I don't think my approach tricks much. I think the big thing you can think mentally, I think, is like I try to refuse to punch. Not that I'm scared to strike out, because strikeouts happen. That's part of the game. But if you can tell yourself refuse to punch here and like battle and fight, foul off anything that's close, then I think that's a good mindset, a good mentality to have.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you can't be scared to swing or you're never gonna get anything done. Like,
Exactly. Yep.
yeah, you got to go into it thinking you're gonna hit the ball, and then if you miss the ball, you miss the ball. But how do you approach bunting? Do you ever bunt? How does that?
Yeah, I used to be a really good bunter actually, and it's funny because for some reason I don't know why, but I'm not as good as I used to be. But we do bunt a good amount of Maryland. I got a couple like sacrifice bunts, but bunting, it's simple, but at the same time it's pretty hard. It's hard to do. I think bunting is just like just simplify it. Just get it down. And if you're sack bunting, don't try and be too perfect. Don't try and push it down the line too much or whatever, because that's just when you fail it off. And then also you got to get a good pitch to bunt. Bunt something that's in the strike zone. If it's not in the strike zone, pull back. Um, yeah, that's really my approach to bunting.
Yeah, for sure. That makes a lot of sense. And going to last year, did you have any moments, any specific moments where you kind of soaked it all in and had to think about the moment for a second and realize where you are and not just.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a really good question. I would say, yeah. I think at Penn State, I came in, got a pinch at bat against like their best closer, hit a single, and we were down a run, and I ended up scoring to tie the game, which was pretty cool to go to extras, which was pretty cool. Um, yeah, I think that was probably my big moment after I scored, just kind of realizing like, hey, like I just tied the game because I got a 2-out hit, and then someone else got a hit behind me, and another hit, and we ended up winning that game the next inning, which was pretty cool. Yeah, that was probably my moment.
Yeah, that's a great moment tying the game there. I mean, who is the best team you played last season?
Best team we played last year. Um, I mean, just first of all, I don't like, giving credit to other teams really, if I'm being honest. Just because there were a lot of moments last year in our season that slipped away from us, and I completely think that like we win a couple of these series, our season looks completely different. Like we get into the tournament, and anything can happen in the Big Ten tournament. And, then if we win the tournament, then we make a regional, and so anything could happen. But I don't like giving credit to teams. But I would say that UCLA and Oregon were both good teams. Uh, yeah, I mean, we played Wake Forest. They were a good team. Probably Wake Forest. I think when we played them, they were hot, but we actually took one from them, so that was pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I know Wake Forest is a baseball powerhouse, but yeah, I mean, what do you think is the future of Maryland baseball? What's the goal next season? Is there anything in the team about what the goal is, or do you have a personal goal? What's that like?
Yeah, I mean, I think the goal is the same every year, right? Is just to win. Um,
And
we have I mean, there's a great group of guys. Like last year's team was awesome. Like, at the end of the day, like I'm not gonna remember the home runs I hit or the doubles, but it's gonna remember the like, the memories with my guys. Um, so I think really the goal is, especially next year, like let's make the tournament, or let's hopefully win the tournament, and then after that, it's can we get to a regional, maybe win a regional, make it to super. So like obviously, we want to win, right? That's those are the goals. But I think next year is like we got to simplify these goals. We didn't win our first series until like the last 3 weeks of the season. So maybe it's like um, winning a series, winning that first series. Maybe that's a good goal to start with.
Yeah, for sure. I have two more questions. How do you stay locked in on the next game while also focusing on your long term goal? Like during the season, do you think about the long term, or is it always just that next game for you?
Yeah, it's always just the next game, right? You can't be thinking that far ahead because if you think that far ahead, there's no chance you make it. You got really got like it's a long season, 56 games. You really got to take it one game at a time.
Um, my last question is: have you? I know there's a lot of transfer portal stuff going around. Have you considered transferring out of Maryland? Has that thought crossed your mind, or are you Maryland all the way?
No, no, Maryland all the way. I got a lot of opportunity last year that I really didn't expect to get, and I got a lot of treatment. What like good treatment from the coaches and the staff and everyone here, and I love it. I love all the people here. I've got friends that aren't athletes, got friends on other teams. I got my girlfriend goes here. She's a gymnast here. And I really like this place. I love my living situation, my roommates, the school itself, and I love the baseball program. Even though we didn't have the year we wanted last year, but still love the guys. And yeah, I mean, my goal is to be here 3, 4 years. I want to stay here my entire college career. Um, so yeah, it's a good question though, because you never know what the portal nowadays, like that thing is crazy. And I have so many friends that jump in it and, it works out for them. They hope it does. And, you just never know with it.
That's all I have for you today, Parker. Thank you so much for coming on. Is there any last things you want to tell the listeners?
Yeah, no, I mean, first of all, thanks for having me on here. I really appreciate it. I love what you're doing, and glad that you're so, enthusiastic about it. Yeah, the last thing I'd say is just like any kids who, are listening or have a dream of playing college baseball at any level, just keep working. Um, let things work out for you. Stay in school, do good in school. It always goes a long way. Be a good person, treat others with respect and treat others kindly. That also goes a long way. And I think the best thing you can do as a young athlete growing up is just focusing on being a good teammate. The more you start to focus on yourself, and the more selfish you become, the less coaches will like you. And honestly, the worse you'll be at your sport, any sport. The second you can put the energy away from yourself and put it towards other people, I promise you, like good things will start happening to you. And yeah, it'll all work out in your favor. So that's all I gotta say, man.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you so much for coming on, Parker.
Yep, no problem, man.